Super Kicking It with Kelsi presents Two-Faced Wrestling Talk with Kelsi and Paul. Brought to you by PWPNation.com, the reliable wrestling website for news and opinions. Now, here's your host, Kelsi.
Hi, and welcome to Two-Faced Wrestling Talk. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. And man, we've got a stacked show tonight. We're going to be talking all kinds of stuff. Our extended discussion looks at a poll about, how close have you been to giving up on WWE? And then we also have great question and answer topics. In our closing out the show, we talk Tama Tonga, and you talk about comedy in wrestling and how sometimes it's too much, specifically in WWE sometimes. But first, we're going to kick things off talking about, the recent stuff in wrestling, including Dontaku shows, the WWE Backlash show, which actually got a lot of backlash itself because the fans were not happy with it. Plus, we'll talk quick highlights about a recent Ring of Honor War of the Worlds show.
And speaking of Ring of Honor, we also have Kelsi's great interview with Brian Milonas and Beer City Bruiser right before Supercard of Honor. Tremendous visual seeing Tiny Kelsi between the two of those guys. And also the Scott Steiner thing that refuses to die. We'll have more on that in our third segment. But first, we want to thank our sponsors from St. Arnold Brewing Company, and they've got a huge event coming up Saturday, June 9th. It is at the St. Arnold Brewing Company in Houston, Texas. It's the 24th anniversary party to celebrate 24 years of brewing independently in Texas. Our 24th anniversary party will feature local and independent Texas music showcase with all local, all independent bands and artists on 2 stages at the brewery. We're proud to host a 100% Texas lineup. Tickets are on sale now, and you've got a couple of options. $35 Saint package includes admission, 2 beers, and a commemorative 24th anniversary glass, or a $10 general admission tickets will get you in. And of course, beer is going to be available for purchase, and that should be reason enough to go. Even if you don't like music, just go for the St. Arnold beer at the brewery in downtown Houston. But we're going to start a long way from Houston. We're going to go all the way to Japan and the 2-night New Japan Dontaku show, and it was tremendous.
So many good matches, and it's funny that, it happened during, the weekend of Backlash, because it's like comparing the two, it's like apples and oranges. It's so crazy. Dontaku was so good. Obviously, the big surprise, Jericho coming out of the crowd, attacking Naito, really intense, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. I really loved it. I can't wait to see their matchup at Dominion, and I knew that Jericho would be back. So, also, I loved Ospreay versus Kushida. That might have actually been my favorite match out of the 2 nights, because we love Ospreay so much. He's so talented, one of a kind in his emotion, his selling, his talented moves in the ring, and he actually debuted a new finisher called the Starbreaker. I liked it a lot.
I think this is a candidate for match of the year. It was tremendous. It was so good. You brought up the great selling by Ospreay when he went into the turnbuckle pad, holding his shoulder and his neck. I said to you as we watched it, and I'm sure this will be something that people disagree with, but I think Ospreay as a total package right now is actually better than Omega, because it feels like there's something different with Ospreay every night that he wrestles. It's not just the same stuff. It's not the same sequence of things. He does so many unique things in the ring. I think he's the best wrestler in wrestling right now.
Yeah, he first was in my top 10. Then he quickly moved into my top 5. And now, honestly, he's in my top 3. And yeah, to kind of agree with your really bold statement, for me, he surpassed Omega. I love Omega, and I think Omega has had, matches of the century. But Ospreay, there's just something unique about him and so likable. I don't even know. I think he's going to be a top guy for years and years and years to come. I think he might be somebody that we're calling, a legend in, 30 years.
As long as he stays healthy. And Don Callis even made a reference about that, comparing him to a horse that at certain points a horse is reined back and stops racing because it's too much for them. And he kind of compared Ospreay to that.
And Kevin Kelly even said something about his star burning out maybe, too soon if he keeps going the way he does. So all those analogies I think are really powerful. But I love the way he comes off like he's putting everything into it, like he's leaving it all in the ring every time. Every match he has is like he wants it to be the best match of his career. And that, I think, comes across. Like, let's talk about seeing him at PWG. It's not like the level of people watching Dontaku, but he still gave it that same effort, and that is really apparent in everything he does.
And that match really, again, kind of stole the show from the main event, even though the main event was really good, Tanahashi and Okada. And you had an interesting thing right off the beginning about Tanahashi.
Yeah, I mean, recently I had gone back and watched the Suzuki-Tanahashi match. I think it's from 2012. And I forgot how much I liked Tanahashi's old music. He hasn't used it in a while. When I first started watching, he had his old music. I just totally forgot about it. When you start hearing something new, you become accustomed to it. So this new music for a while, I was like, yeah, never really got into it. Hearing his old music recently, I was like, man, I miss that old music. So first thing that, for some reason, that randomly popped in my head right away. But, the crowd was so into Tanahashi. So it shows you that even though Okada's their top guy right now, the love for Tanahashi is kind of like everlasting. He has such a great star power over there, truly is a one-of-a-kind performer for that company. I mean, you notice people in the crowd having some powerful reactions.
Yeah, I mean, women were crying when he lost, or even when even in the course of the match, when he was getting beat up. Like genuine emotion. So he certainly connects with the crowd in maybe a way we don't understand because we don't know why he connects with the crowd so much, but he certainly does. But as good as the match was, after Okada got the win, he got on the mic and he kind of started listing off wrestlers he's beaten. And he even said, oh, Omega, I've done that. And he listed off Zack Sabre and all these guys he's beaten, Naito. And then he goes, well, who should I face? And he went back to Omega. And so he called out Kenny Omega. And then they had a great segment talking about their battles. And so they've set up now Dominion, no time limit, best 2 out of 3 falls. How incredible is that going to be?
Yeah, I'm so excited for that, and we'll talk more a little bit about how excited we are for that match. It's a big deal, and I'm kind of surprised. I thought maybe they would put one of these big matches from Dominion on, like, the U.S. show, because I've heard that the Cow Palace show has actually struggled selling tickets, so I thought that for sure, it was either going to be an Omega-Okada rematch for that or the Naito-Jericho match. Neither of them are happening there. They're happening at Dominion. That's kind of awesome because Dominion's stacked, but at the same time, what is going to be that match for the Cow Palace show that's going to put ticket sales on fire and really make those tickets move? I don't know. I'm a little concerned because, New Japan has sold out their previous shows without even releasing a card. This one's a little different. They're coming back from Japan to California so much quicker than, the last time, the gap that existed last time. And they need to release some kind of matches to get people, really excited to go.
We're going to switch gears now and go to Backlash, and Kelsey brought it up earlier in the show. There was so much Twitter hate for this show, and did I think it was the greatest show ever? No, but I was shocked at the hatred for this show. I thought it was a okay pay-per-view. It was solid. I think maybe because it got off to such a great start. Miz and Rollins was such a good match. They actually had a great storytelling. They set up this whole thing about how Rollins' knee was so healthy, and then he took a misstep and Miz attacked it. And so I thought they did a good job of that. Rollins kicking out of two skull-crushing finales. But it made me think of a point you've made about New Japan, how they value the IC title. This, in the last month and a half or so, finally feels like WWE maybe is getting the idea of valuing the IC title, because the matches have been better than the main event matches. And the funny thing is, they've been the beginnings of these shows or early in the show. But I mean, you had Miz, Rollins, and Balor at Mania. You had Miz, Rollins, Balor, and Joe at Greatest Royal Rumble, and then this Miz Rollins match. I mean, obviously you have two common denominators there, but they're putting some of their best talent in these IC title matches, and it was downhill in that show after that match because it was such a good match.
Well, let me add, like, even before it seemed like they were wanting to raise up the IC title belt, Miz kind of seemed to have taken it upon himself to raise it long before that. I mean, Miz has been delivering great performances on the mic and in the ring that are entertaining, and they're kind of bringing the IC title into prominence, and he wanted to do that. I think he was successful, but like you said, these matches are kind of helping making that title even more important than Miz already kind of made it. But let me be honest here and say, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I fell asleep during like 80% of Backlash, maybe even 90%. And that's not just because it wasn't a good show. I get really tired sometimes, especially watching wrestling. I don't know what it is. It's almost like it's so relaxing that I just fall asleep.
She does fall asleep even during New Japan shows.
I
so
do.
This is not just a WWE
No,
issue.
I will admit, I'm not lying. Like, a lot of times I'll have to rewatch a New Japan match. The difference is I actually go back and rewatch those New Japan matches, whereas WWE, I'm like, whatever. It kind of sucks because now we have this podcast, and I don't want to be talking about stuff that I haven't watched. I try not to do that, but this week has been so crazy, I just haven't had a chance to rewatch anything from Backlash, and yeah, guys, I'm sorry. I don't have much to add to this convo. I was asleep. I'm sorry.
I've had to wake her up twice just since the start of the podcast. That's how bad it is.
Well, I am drinking, so that's part of the problem.
St. Arnold's go down smooth. Just a couple other bullet points, and these are things we discussed. Bliss, Nia Jax was a really good match. There's a great sequence where Nia was just ragdolling Bliss all over the ring. But then they end it with this speech from Nia that was so... I mean, we talk about WWE forcing things, and we're going to talk about it more. You know, they force in this bullying speech, then Michael Cole has basically a PSA. I mean, this is one of the things that probably set people off early in the Backlash, and that's probably the Twitter reaction you saw was... It probably started right there.
Yeah, I mean, people really hated that whole Nia Jax promo. They're like, oh, how corny, how forced, how terrible. And we'll talk about this later. Really, WWE being so scripted and everything mapped out to a T, really, I think, hinders them and hinders the audience's enjoyment of the product and of the characters. Because when they're reined in and forced to say things that aren't natural and real seeming, it hurts the performer, it hurts the company, and it really sucks for the viewer watching at home. So all around, it's bad.
Quick other bullet points. Cass Bryan, thought it was a predictable ending, but I was impressed with Cass. Shinsuke AJ, again, another match that was actually better than Mania. I like the double count out kind of advancing the storyline. And
a lot of people think that should have gone on last.
Yes.
But then people speculated after they found out about the finish that it didn't go on last because of the double count out. But even with the count out, I think people would have been more happy with that closing out the show than what did. And I don't know because I didn't see it. So you talk about it, Paul.
And the ending of the show was Roman versus Samoa Joe. Predictable ending. You know, they weren't going to have Roman lose again. But I will say this. Samoa Joe, we were talking about Will Ospreay being one of our favorites. Samoa Joe is one of my favorites, and I really, really hope that WWE gives him a title push because he is a phenomenal talent for such a big man being so athletic.
Samoa Joe is a great talent, and he's one of my favorites, but will they ever really give him a shot at the belt? I don't know. It's WWE. I'm not confident.
No,
I don't know.
I'm not confident either. Ring of Honor. War of the Worlds, couple shows coming up this weekend. Friday night, there's one. But you watched a little on Wednesday night. Anything jump out to you there?
Yeah. Tension. Lots of tension within the Bullet Club. It's getting worse and worse, I tell you.
Everything's fine.
No, nothing's fine. Well, one, Bernard the Business Bear got kicked, and this set off a whole chain of reactions. I personally didn't feel so bad for Bernard. If it was Burry, I would have felt pretty bad because he's so cute and sweet. Bernard, he's just all business and boring. So yeah, once he got kicked, Cody got really mad, and Marty and Cody continuing tension. They were screaming back and forth, and I love that story going forward. Obviously, we're going to see some kind of a culmination to this. And in fact, when most people are listening to this podcast, there might be more developments from the next War of the World show. We'll just have to see. But let me say there was an awkward part. I know you didn't get to see the pay-per-view. Dalton Castle comes out, and it seemed like he was going to relinquish the belt. He was talking about being hurt and how putting off treating an injury can make it worse. Who would have known? And then all of a sudden they're like, but don't worry, I'm not going to have a match tonight. But there's always time for brunch. And the boys start throwing croissants into the audience. It was really weird. I don't know if they made this last minute change because Dalton really is hurt, or was it because they wanted Taven, who he was supposed to face, they wanted Taven to have a win in his, hometown. Because, Taven's family was in the audience, and then after he had a match later in the night, he hugged his family, and people were really behind him, and I don't know, what was the reasoning behind the brunch thing? I just don't understand.
Sounds like they're copying the New Day, throwing breakfast items into the...
Well, I would most certainly rather croissants than pancakes, because the pancakes are cold and gross. Croissants, it doesn't matter if it's cold.
Well, speaking of Ring of Honor, before Supercard of Honor, Kelsi got a chance to interview Brian Milonas and Beer City Bruiser, and we always encourage you not just to listen to the podcast, but always check it out on YouTube to see the video version of this, and this is one you'll definitely want to check out. Little bitty Kelsi in between Brian Milonas and Beer City Bruiser.
Hey, it's Kelsi with Super Kicking It with Kelsi, and I'm joined by the Beer City Bruiser and Brian Milonas. Boy, man, you guys are tall.
We're the biggest bouncers in the Ring of Honor bar, that's for sure.
Nobody compares.
I would say so. So let's talk a little bit about your beer. What kind of beer is it? Is it an IPA? I'm always very curious about the Beer City Brew.
It's a lager. It's a very good lager, yes. It's the greatest beer ever.
I think so. I mean, if you're drinking it, it must be good.
Oh, yeah, I drink it by the keg.
I know. What's your favorite cigar?
I don't really have a favorite cigar. I just like the big ones that I can chew on, because I don't really smoke them. I more chew on them. So the bigger the better.
And Brian, you have a really cool podcast. People might not know. It's a wrestling podcast about nothing.
About nothing.
Why is it about nothing?
Well, because it's really like the show like Seinfeld, right? It's about nothing, but it's about everything at the same time. We talk everything. We talk retro wrestling. We talk about our careers. We talk about our ups and downs. We're talking a lot of Ring of Honor these days, as you can probably imagine.
Tell us about your love of Seinfeld. When did that start? And, obviously you named your podcast after it, so tell us a little bit about that love.
Yeah, I was probably in junior high, and giving away my age here, but I just stayed with the show, and the show's been in syndication for years, and I'll just sit down, I'll watch it almost every night of the week, and then I have a few buddies who are just nuts, and we just text and talk quotes to each other all the time. So if you're ever around us, we're just Seinfeld quote central. So.
Gold, Brian, gold. And tell me, what is your favorite episode and character?
Oh, it's the Merv Griffin show. That is the best. It's easy to go. Main characters, I love George. George's my favorite character. But secondary characters, I'm a big fan of Mendelbaum, Mr. Mendelbaum. Like Mendelbaum. Love it.
Newman's my guy, but he's good too. So, Beer City Bruiser, man, you have had some great matches lately, especially when you went over to New Japan. Tell me about those. The crowd really reacted to you.
Yeah, they did. The Japanese crowd was amazing. Going out and spitting beer in their face and stuff, and then they asked for it. Like, that was crazy to me. But yeah, it was a dream come true going to Japan. Going for the Never Openweight Championship against Hiroki Goto. That was an amazing match. It was on my bucket list, so I'm happy I got to do it. And then going for Ring of Honor Gold also in Japan was great. Just shows that our heavyweight championship is international. It's truly a world championship.
And, Ring of Honor is getting bigger and bigger. I think New Japan, the relationship they have with them is part of it, but I think there's even more reasons. Why do you attribute this growth?
I think it's all the guys in the locker room. Every guy goes out and tries to put on the best match they can. And I think the fans realize that. We're not watered down. Every guy goes out there, puts emotion in their matches. All the characters are characters. You know what I mean? We got beer drinkers. We got big guys. We got real men. And then you can attribute to the Bullet Club the success that they've had. And then they're not selfish guys, so they pass the success along down the roster. So I just think it's the locker room. We're just all enjoy working here, and it shows.
It definitely shows, and us as the fans can tell. It's one of my favorite promotions ever. It's so great. But, Brian, you tell me what you feel about tonight in Ring of Honor, Supercard of Honor. What's it like being a part of all this?
It's incredible. It's been a long road for me. I mean, I've been wrestling for 16 years, and to get to here, to this place, to this moment right now, teaming with Bruiser, who we become fast friends too, so that's cool to share that moment. And but for me, it's really that this is, this is what I've been working for 16 years, and to go out tonight, sold out crowd, and get to do this, it's incredible. It's something I'm just truly grateful for.
Well, it's definitely well-deserved. And do you guys want to face anyone specifically, as a team? Anybody on your mind?
We'll take on anybody. We got the Motor City Machine Guns tonight, so we're going to beat them. And then, of course, we want the Briscoes because they're the tag team champions, and we want the gold.
Yeah, line them up. Line them up, we'll set them down. Bucks, Machine Guns, Briscoes, whoever. Line them up, we'll knock them down.
Yep.
I can't wait to see you guys knock them down like dominoes. That'll be awesome. And just, come up with a name, though. I want to hear a really unique name combining the two of you guys. Y'all need something because y'all are really indescribable, one-of-a-kind pair.
Thank you so much.
We're trying, so.
Please tell us where to find your podcast.
Yeah, if you go to the WPAN.com, that's the easiest way to get it. And that drops every single Monday.
Plug anything else you want to plug.
Yeah, but head over to BrianMilonas.com for new T-shirts and things of that nature, and find me on social media. Just search Brian Milonas. All will come up.
Beer City, tell me where you can get your shirts. Yep. Tell me where you can get your merch and find you on social media.
You can go to ROHWrestling.com to get my koozie. It's in the shop part. My T-shirts are at ProWrestlingTees.com/Beer City Bruiser. On Facebook, I'm the Beer City Bruiser, and Twitter, I'm at BCB Winchester.
Perfect. You guys check these dudes out. They're incredible.
So a great interview. Make sure you check out the interview and all sorts of great content on the YouTube channel. Super Kicking It with Kelsi, that's Kelsi, and Super Kicking It is with a G. And of course, she's on social media at Super Kicking It. And that was a fun interview to shoot.
It was so much fun. I really love talking Seinfeld specifically. That was one of my favorite things. And also, I was dying to know Beer City Bruiser's beer, what kind of beer it was, because now that I actually know what different type of beers there are, I could, ask the question with some knowledge behind it. So that was kind of fun. But I kind of want to give a quote. Brian Milonas had this great tweet that he sent out, and I just loved it. He said, "To stand among the best, you have to believe you're one of the best. I will unapologetically stand on this stage believing I belong, just as I always have." And that was a tweet promoting his match at the Ring of Honor show I watched recently, the War of the World show. Him and Beer City Bruiser and Silas against LIJ, Naito, Evil, and Sonata. And yeah, they lost the match, and the match was shorter than I would have liked, but I still think it was great. I love seeing Brian Milonas on the roster. He's great. And just to more thoroughly plug his podcast, the WPAN on Twitter, they're so entertaining, so funny. Him and Mike Crockett, I really love everything they have to say. And also, actually, Mike just started a new podcast about wrestling podcasting, interviewing people who are doing wrestling podcasts, how they started, their kind of like methods of how they do it. It's fascinating, especially if you want to know more about best ways to podcast in general. I really enjoyed their first episode that just dropped this week.
Well, that's going to do it for the news of the week and great interview, and we're going to step aside for a second, and when we come back, we're going to have our heads and tails discussion, and it all started because of a poll. St. Arnold Brewing Company, located in Houston, is Texas' oldest craft brewery. Their goal is to brew world-class beers and deliver them to their customers as fresh as possible, making them the best beers in Texas and Louisiana. Their customers are beer lovers, people that appreciate great, full-flavored beers. So whether you're enjoying an Art Car IPA or a smooth-drinking lawnmower, look for St. Arnold beers throughout Louisiana and Texas.
What? Hey, Jim, where does Wrestling Discussions live?
PWP Nation?
That's correct. PWP Nation is the #1 source for all things professional wrestling. They have great articles, podcasts, and overall great wrestling content. No dirt sheet rumors, just articles and facts.
You can follow PWP Nation on all social media platforms like Facebook at facebook.com/PWP Nation. You can also follow them on Twitter and Instagram, with both using the same handles, which is at PWP Nation.
Radical. And please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe to PWP Nation Network, where you will find all the great podcasts like Offended, Beer and Money, and many more. And please give us a Dave Meltzer rating. Give us that 5-star rating.
That's right. Go join the community today to get the best content for your professional wrestling needs.
PWP Nation, where wrestling discussion lives.
Welcome back to Two-Faced Wrestling Talk, and it's time for our extended discussion. It's back after a couple weeks hiatus. It's heads and tails, and this discussion topic kind of came out of nowhere in that you just created a poll, and it got a lot of traction and a lot of positive feedback, and we've decided we're going to discuss some of the answers and some of our thoughts on this poll question. So why don't you start with what the poll question actually was?
Okay, well, this poll just kind of came out of nowhere because people were so unhappy with Backlash. I was like, well, man, there's a lot of unhappiness online, and usually, there's some WWE negativity, but a lot of times I'm always like, seeing positivity. So I was like, wow, it seems like people are giving up hope here. I said, I am curious, how close have you been in the last year to giving up on WWE? I have gotten close several times, and I did stop for a while, but because of certain factors, I continue watching. Maybe you watch but don't enjoy. Or you think there is nothing wrong? Vote, give reasons and thoughts. And out of 600 votes, 16% said I did stop watching, 43% won, and it said close but still watch, 35% will never stop watching, and 7% said other reasons.
Well, I think it's an interesting poll, and I guess I'll weigh in, but where I would fall in on the vote, I will never stop watching, I guess. You never say never, but I admit the product has slipped. There's no doubt about it. So I get people's unhappiness with WWE, but I also don't think it's as bad as everybody makes it out to be. It's just not the same level of wrestling as New Japan and Ring of Honor. It's not. So I can get why people are frustrated. I still thoroughly enjoy watching Raw and SmackDown. I think Raw is too long, but it's appointment viewing for me. So I don't see, for me, I would fit into that 35% that I won't stop watching. It would take something pretty dramatic for me to stop watching.
Well, I guess I fall in that percent too. And you know why? It's your fault. Because I would totally stop watching if you weren't so into watching. And also, I do want to talk about it for this podcast, but otherwise I'd be more than happy to stop watching. And I'm not trying to be overly negative here. I know people like Dave and other people like positivity, but I like to analyze things, as I said before on this podcast. I like to really delve into, why something isn't good. And that's all fun, but if I stopped watching WWE, I could have more time for some great wrestling I know is out there that I've never had the chance to watch because, we dedicate 5 hours to this some weeks even more. Progress I really want to get into, Lucha Underground, All Japan. These are some things that I've been wanting to watch for the longest time, and because of WWE, I can't watch it. And right now, WWE is at a level where it's not enjoyable, and it kind of sucks that because of that, I can't watch these things that I know I would probably be really into. So I'm not trying to be super negative, I'm just stating what I think are facts. It's just a feeling. I just don't feel as excited for WWE as I do for something like New Japan. And that's just the way it is.
And there were a lot of people that had some really interesting things they weighed in with in this poll. And, some things that we can discuss.
So our friends at the Blade Job show says, these are very telling results. The trend that people are upset but are still willing to see what happens is interestingly close to the number of people who think that there is nothing WWE can do to make them turn off the TV. That's a good point there, meaning no matter how bad it gets, they'll always have a viewership. And that's almost like, does that contribute to the way WWE kind of goes about planning stuff? Mm-hmm. They know that, if it doesn't work, hey, we're always going to have viewers. It doesn't matter. I think that kind of mindset might be prevalent backstage a little bit. I'm sure they all want to do well and have great performances, but I think in the back of their minds, they all know, well, we're kind of like, we're gold, we're coasting. That's an unhealthy thing, though.
Yeah, but at the same time, they have to look at the numbers and know that the ratings are way down from what they used to be. And I've got good friends who are lifelong wrestling fans that have basically stopped watching WWE. And, a lot of it is because of too much haha stuff, too much joking around, which is something I'm actually going to talk about later in the show. I think look, WWE did funny stuff. When The Rock was on the mic, he was funny. Edge and Christian were funny. But WWE tries to force the humor a lot of times. They have a writer for John Cena. And that stuff, it's not funny, it's not entertaining. So if you're not going to have a stellar wrestling product and you've got to sit through bad comedy bits, I can get why people have turned on it.
Yeah, but your friends probably were not what people consider to be hardcore fans. And, that brings me to my next comment that I'm going to read. Our good friends Retro Wrestling Games at RW Games Presents says, if we didn't stop watching after all the wrestler deaths and the Benoit murders, there is nothing they can do that would make hardcores ever leave. That's an interesting point, because people always want to find out, and that's what a lot of the comments on the poll actually said. I still watch it, I still keep it on in the background. I don't watch Raw and SmackDown every week, but I read what happens, yada, yada, yada. Basically, most of the comments said, well, I'm upset with it, I'm about to give up, I'm unhappy, but I still watch. They made it sound rarely, but still, they still kind of pay attention. And that even fits into what I'm saying. Even if I would stop watching, if you were like, let's give up Raw and SmackDown, it's okay for a little while. Well, and let's say I get into other wrestling, I'd probably still read about WWE. It's true. And the thing is, they've got a great roster. I want to see them do great things. I know they can. I'm not trying to be a WWE hater. I really am not. And I'm not saying all hope is lost either. I'm just saying the reality is it's not the most exciting product out there right now. And I don't know how anyone can say that it is. And if you do say that it is, do you watch other wrestling? Because there's so much good stuff out there. WWE could change, what they do, but what I think always will work against them is that they're a publicly traded company. A lot of people say, oh, the reason why it's so bad is because it's PG now. And they talk about how great the Attitude Era was. There was actually a lot of terrible things in the Attitude Era that people kind of gloss over because of the whole nostalgia factor. But I think before they were publicly traded, they were a little more free to do what they wanted with promos. They weren't as scripted, like every word wasn't thought out and approved. Now you've got sponsors, you've got stockholders, and being publicly traded and in the public eye so much, you have to kind of watch what you say. So they manage people's every word, and that's crazy. I think that has to do with people getting turned off with how forced it all seems, and you said the same thing.
Yeah, and look, like I said, I'll always keep watching, but I've also evolved in my wrestling tastes, and I love New Japan. I like Ring of Honor. I'm not pro WWE. I'm not anti WWE. I like wrestling, so I like all kinds of wrestling, and so WWE is still going to fit into that mix for me, but that doesn't mean that I think it's better in any way than New Japan or Ring of Honor. I enjoy all wrestling, and I enjoy different types, but I can see, people being turned off by WWE's product right now.
And I liked what my friend Coy Riley said, at Coy Riley. He says, I've been WWE free for over 2 years. I've never loved wrestling this much since I was a kid. Not trying to hate on WWE. If that's your thing, I'm happy for you. But maybe it could help some of your listeners find that love again for wrestling like it did for me if they tried this other wrestling. I think he's got a good point because a lot of people don't know what's out there. But then again, like I said, to each his own. Some people don't like the other stuff that's out there. They might see New Japan and not be able to get into it because maybe to them it's, not story-driven enough. Although I think there's a lot of storytelling in New Japan. A lot of people say it's all about the in-ring there, but no, they do some story too. Some good story as well. But, I don't know. I think that he's got a good point in that people get so obsessed with, like, why is WWE so bad? Why is WWE so bad? Instead of just letting the variety in wrestling kind of take that anger away. Because me, I complain about it too, but I do it in a more constructive, analytical way. Not where I'm like, it's the worst thing in the world. All that I know is when I bash WWE, it's more that it's hard to watch because it's not as exciting. And actually, this leads me to another poll somebody released on Twitter, Smark to Death, at Smark to Death on Twitter. They kind of said, do you find that watching other wrestling has actually hurt you watching WWE? And I was like, oh my God, yeah. Because before I found New Japan, I was a little annoyed with WWE, but I still watched, and I still cared about it a lot more. Now that I found other wrestling, it's like, it doesn't bother me so much if I give up a Raw or give up a pay-per-view here or there. In fact, it kind of makes the pay-per-views harder to watch because I know I can't wait for the next New Japan show. It's so much more exciting. And there's a few more comments I want to read quickly. Wrestling Noir says, I gave up a few years ago and got back into WWE when I started writing my book, Wrestling Noir, Real in Memphis, Cheap Pop. I look at it like a marriage. You have ups and downs, but you stick with it because deep down, as long as it's good most of the time, you'll put up with the bad. He's got a point there, like when WWE is good, like we've said many times, it's great. It's just that it's not always firing on all cylinders. It's not at that level all the time. But like you said, people stick around for that 5%, 10%, that good that does come out of it. But with all the negatives that were discussed, what makes me happy and is a big positive is that this poll created so much discussion among all of our Twitter followers and hopefully our listeners too. Thank you guys all for kind of interacting with us on that. We loved hearing your thoughts. Really, really enjoyed it. And so many thought-provoking answers. I couldn't even read them all. I wish I could, sit here and read every single one of your responses because I was thoroughly fascinated and engaged, and I just love that type of talk. I could, talk back and forth with you guys all day. Thanks so much again.
Yeah, certainly just go through on our Twitter page at TwoFacePod and just go through the comments because there was a lot of insightful stuff. Really good discussion coming out of a poll. So we're happy you guys enjoyed it and participated. And when we come back, we're going to get more interaction with you. It's question and answer time, plus sending them home.
Our awesome Two-Faced logo was created by artist Eric Hudson. Check him out on Facebook at Eric Hudson Illustration. Hudson is spelled Hodson. He also has a Patreon where you can directly support his wrestling artwork, which is based off of comic book covers. His Patreon is patreon.com/HeyMelby, HeyMelby. Also, go to webtoons.com and subscribe to his new comic, The Dreaded Dinosaur Man. His art can also be purchased on Store Envy. Thanks, Eric. We love your logo.
Hey, it's Tricky and Stoutsy from the Offended Podcast, produced by PWP Nation and...
Tricky, what are you doing? We're supposed to be recording a commercial.
Yeah, just kind of drawing a blank on what to say, really. What do you want to say?
Well, I don't know. We could talk about really anything.
Like what we talk about in the show?
Yeah, I don't know, maybe sports, hockey, some movies,
maybe wrestling,
music, anything really.
Yeah, anything. I guess we are kind of like the Seinfeld podcast in a way. We just talk about anything, and sometimes we just have people on and just get to know them, just like people.
Kind of just shoot the breeze.
Yeah, breeze.
Did we just film a commercial?
Maybe so. And hey, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at OffendedPod. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/OffendedPod, where we have exclusive NHL playoff hockey talk going on. And we are now on iHeartRadio, baby. So you can follow us there on iHeartRadio, on their website and their app. And all you have to do is just search Offended on iHeartRadio, and we pop right up. But if you want to find us on Apple Podcasts or anywhere else where you get your podcasts, please search PWP Nation Network, and we come right up. And we have a t-shirt. Jim, do you know where we get that t-shirt at?
I sure do. It's at www.prowrestlingtees.com/offended-podcast.
That is correct. Wow, we just did a commercial.
Are we getting paid?
Damn it.
Welcome back to Two-Faced Wrestling Talk. We're going to get to our question segment in just a few minutes, but first I just want to give a friendly reminder to please follow us on social media. You can do so by following at Two-Faced-Pod, TWOFACEDPOD, and that's on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Also, we have a website where actually it links you right to where you can listen to our podcast. Like, it links you to our Stitcher, to our Spreaker account, to iTunes, all kinds of places to listen to our show. And that's at twofacedpod.com. Also, if you do listen to us on iTunes, you can find us under PWP Nation Network. Please go to the ratings, leave us a rating and a review. That would really help with those algorithms. It would help get our podcast out there to more people, and we'd love that because we love interacting with as many people as we can.
Kind of funny that you said algorithms because, well, that's kind of apropos. It leads us right into a math sort of discussion here. The numbers don't lie.
They don't lie. And, the numbers have been a big discussion lately because the numbers were so important for someone called Scott Steiner, who people have been hearing your hate, Paul. It's been a big discussion lately. People are kind of taking offense to it, saying, what the heck are you talking about? Scott Steiner is awesome. Big Poppa Pump. What do you got against him? So one of our, loyal listeners who have a great podcast themselves, Take the Bump Podcast, at Take the Bump Pod on Twitter, they cut a promo on you, saying why Scott Steiner is actually really great. Listen now.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Take the Bump Podcast presents to you today, El Tigre.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is El Tigre, and I am here today as the advocate of Big Poppa Pump, Freakzilla, the big bad booty daddy himself, Scott Steiner. Now, Paul from Two-Faced Wrestling Podcast, you claim that Scott Steiner might be, or perhaps is, the worst wrestler of all time. But I'm here to give you some facts, my friend. Scott Steiner is a one-time wrestling All-American at the University of Michigan who finished 6th nationally. He is a 2-time WWF Tag Team Champion, a 2-time IWGP Tag Team Champion. He is a 2-time TNA Impact Tag Team Champion. He is a 7-time WCW NWA World Tag Team Champion, a 2-time WCW United States Heavyweight Champion, a 2-time WCW World Television Champion, and a 1-time WCW World Heavyweight Champion. The big gold belt, the best belt in the history of the business. Let me tell you something, Paul. Scott Steiner has held so many more titles than this that I can't even read them all on the air because we don't have that much time. But I've added it up. And Scott, would you like to tell me what that math comes out to?
The numbers don't lie.
Thank you, Scott. And you know what, Paul? Why don't you drive on up, and we'll meet you in beautiful Ackworth, Georgia. And why don't we go have a nice breakfast? Maybe at a Shoney's. They have a wonderful Shoney's with a breakfast buffet. We'll get us a nice breakfast buffet, and then when we're done eating, you and me, we can go and we can have us a nice civil discussion with just you, me, and Big Poppa Pump. Thank you. That is all.
All right, well, these guys are clearly drunk when they do their podcast if they think Scott Steiner is good. You can give me all the numbers you want. All right, he has all these tag team belts. To me, that just means he had a good partner because he stinks. And, yes, he has one WCW title. That is impressive. Until you remember David Arquette has one WCW title. So I'll give Scott Steiner his props. He's just as good as David Arquette. Happy, people?
Oh, gosh. I just want to clear something up. You know, I don't have any hate against Steiner. I don't have anything against him.
Because you've never watched him wrestle.
I have watched some old stuff. Don't lump me in with Paul, guys, please. I'm not anti-Steiner as much as he is, but he was kind of slow in that Impact pay-per-view redemption. He really was.
Kind of slow? Like molasses pouring out of a barrel slow.
Oh, jeez.
But
You're going to get us even more in trouble.
I know the people that disagree are going to be more vocal, but I know that there are a lot of our listeners that have to agree with me. I can't be the only person that thinks that Scott Steiner was not a very good wrestler, and certainly isn't a good wrestler now.
Oh, gosh.
But the numbers don't lie, which is, kind of apropos that we discuss Scott Steiner on this day.
It is, because actually today, May 11th, that we're taping our podcast, is the 10th anniversary of Sacrifice, the then TNA pay-per-view that Steiner cut his famous Samoa Joe math promo. He cut it, leading up to the May 11th pay-per-view. Pretty cool and very coincidental, but maybe, maybe it's destiny.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if somebody will actually be bold enough to actually agree with me, and not everybody just disagree with me, because I know you're out there, people. There cannot be this many people that like Scott Steiner.
Guys, shout us out on Twitter if you actually agree with Paul. I'll be very surprised and happy to hear that someone agrees.
All right, time for questions, and we're going to get right to it. This is from CC Tron. What match will steal the show for Dominion?
Man, Dominion, it's a stacked card already, the matches that have been announced. But I'm really looking forward to Naito Jericho. Jericho was trying to dispel the rumors, saying that he was done with New Japan. Sneaky devil. We all knew that wasn't the case. I definitely knew. I was like, he's just trying to avoid, calling attention to it, which just made the surprise even better. There were some rumors that day that he was going to show up, and sure enough, he did. I was still surprised, though. I like the way he did it. Lots of cursing, lots of animosity, lots of passion. I like that type of stuff, and that's why I know the match is going to be really good, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Well, I'm going to harken back to something I said in the first segment when we were discussing the New Japan Dontaku show. Who will steal this show, Dominion? Well, the answer is the same for me. It's whoever is taking on Will Ospreay, because that will be the match, because Will Ospreay has been stealing the show the last couple big New Japan shows, and I expect nothing different unless he's hurt. Will Ospreay is going to steal it. He always does. But I guess until he's officially announced, I guess we'll just have to go with Omega Okada.
I mean, that match is not going to disappoint.
No.
Everyone's been waiting for this next match in the series. Could it be Omega that's the one to dethrone Okada? I think so. I've said this before on our podcast. I think he truly is the right person to take the belt off of him. But what's going to happen with his run with Ibushi and the Golden Lovers? I don't know. It's going to be some interesting storytelling unfolding soon. That is, if he wins. Even if he doesn't win, it's still going to be a great in-ring story, nonetheless. Okay, so our next question comes from our good friends who cut the Steiner promo. Take the Bump podcast. It seems like All In is going to be a big success. Do you see it becoming a regular event? If so, will we start seeing other Super Show type of events?
It is going to be a big success unless they invite Scott Steiner. No, it is going to be a huge event. I have a feeling it'll be close to a sellout, if not a sellout for sure, especially as the card keeps getting announced. So, in my mind, absolutely there will be more of these. The Young Bucks like money. Who doesn't? We all like money. And if this is a success and they make a lot of money off it, you're darn right they're going to do it again. And they may do multiples per year if it's that successful.
Yeah, I mean, I do see this event doing very well. I see it selling out, maybe not in 5 minutes. It might be a slower sellout, but it's still going to make them a lot of money, and it's going to be a big part of changing the landscape of wrestling outside of WWE. I truly, truly believe that. And I'm very excited to see what changes will come after that, because I think the Bucks even said one of the reasons behind doing it is not necessarily to get rich. I know you would argue against that, but one of the reasons is to make wrestling outside of WWE a better place for all the people to work, all the boys and women too, and more opportunities for everybody. And I could definitely see that creating this opportunity that they're talking about.
I agree. I agree with all that, but none of that will matter if they don't make money.
Well, yeah.
So they got to make money. Next question is from Dave Pozevsky, and he asks at New Japan Dontaku, why wasn't Matt Jackson selling his hurt back anymore? It's been an awesome thing connected to this tag team for a while, so I was surprised when I didn't see them using that gimmick. Any ideas? Well, Dave, I know you and I have disagreed on some things recently. I 100% agree with you that it was very strange that Matt Jackson was miraculously healed. I thought if the back angle was going to go away, it would be after maybe a hiatus for the Young Bucks where they went and spent time with their family, come back, cut a promo, Matt Jackson, my back is healthy, the tag team division better watch out because I'm better and stronger than ever, whatever. But for them to just kind of let it go away was kind of strange to me.
Well, I can see your point there, especially because in a recent Ring of Honor show, one of the War of the Worlds shows, he was back to slightly selling his back, not to the degree as he was doing so many shows, for so long, but, to a slight degree. But honestly, the lack of selling his back didn't bother me that much at Dontaku, because I didn't feel like he looked 100% like, oh, wow, he's so athletic and so, like, he's completely healthy. I don't know. It just didn't bother me too much.
Of course it didn't. It was the Young Bucks. Have another sip of your St. Arnold and get us to the next question.
You're so mean.
I'm not mean.
I like a lot of people, not just the Young Bucks. I'm not that biased.
I
know great wrestling, guys. I know great wrestling. And the Bucks, best tag team in the world. Fight me. I don't care. And you better not say it's the Usos.
I'm not going to.
Not you.
No.
Lots of people watching and listening. They will say it.
Just
That's
drink.
all right.
Just drink your St. Arnold and ask the next question.
All right. Please don't give me too much heat for my viewpoints, guys. I know I'm a Young Bucks mark. I'm just playing around. Okay. The Blade Job at the Blade Job Show. You guys check them out on YouTube. They're awesome. They ask, what are your thoughts on only certain Ring of Honor contracts being exclusive in the U.S., as opposed to the lesser contracts that allow talent to still work the independent circuit? Been thinking about this myself. I'd like to hear your opinions.
Well, I think it's simple business. Until Ring of Honor is really raking it in, maybe off of a TV deal, there's only so many big contracts they can afford to dole out. And, for those lower card guys, they can't hold them to an exclusive contract. The guys got to have a way to make a living, and so they get to work those independent shows. So I think it's as simple as that. I think if Ring of Honor starts making even more money, and they're obviously headed in the right direction, then maybe you are going to see a lot more guys with exclusive contracts with them.
Yeah, I mean, they're getting bigger and bigger. The streaming service is a big part of that. But again, the only way they can afford to pay the Young Bucks the money that they do, which they need to do to keep them in Ring of Honor and not, lose out to the WWE trying to poach them. To do that, they have to pay, their mid guys and then their lower guys a lesser amount of money, meaning they don't have exclusive contracts. They're going to have to supplement their income other places, and rightfully so. They need to make money in a different way. Like people like Flip Gordon, he is great. He's going to be somebody really, really a top person for the company. But until then, he's got to work other places so he could still be a part of Ring of Honor, but afford to live.
All right, next question from Magnets and Steel at Deej Kirkby. Who is your dream wrestling interview?
Well, I have a couple, and I know he asked for one, but I've got so many that I want to do, and I think they're all, plausible. So, firstly, my number one dream, and you're going to roll your eyes because you always say, we're just talking about this, that I'm a Young Bucks mark, but the Bucks would be an amazing interview. I would love to think of questions, and it would be a challenge, actually, to think of questions that other people haven't already asked 1,000 times, because I have listened to a ton of Young Bucks interviews, and it really would be hard to come up with some new stuff, some new spins on things. I think I would ask about, Nick's editing skills, because as somebody who edits myself, I think it's so impressive that he just taught himself how to do that. What made him want to learn how to edit, what basically made them turn to the YouTube channel. more about their creative process, like, how they come up with shirt ideas and so on and so forth. I think that would be such an interesting interview. And honestly, what better way to get your name out there as a podcaster or a YouTuber than to interview the flippin' Young Bucks? That would be awesome for us, and for me especially. Then, of course, I want to interview Jericho, because I think Jericho is so smart. He's got a great mind for the business, always changing things up. Just, man, he's so smart. I'd love to pick his brain about all kinds of stuff, including podcasting, which he's really great at. Then I would love another person who I feel like is a self-made person who's really successful and really smart, especially in terms of marketing themselves, Colt Cabana. He's got a great podcast as well. Very funny guy, too. He would just be a fun interview. A lot of funny quips I'm sure he could throw in there. He's just a fun guy. I really respect him a lot. Another guy, Matt Hardy, completely revolutionized himself, changed his character up. Really hard to do. Jericho's done it. Matt Hardy's done it. And Matt Hardy a lot of times doesn't get a lot of credit because everyone loves Jeff so much. So I would love to talk to specifically Matt about the evolution of his character, about his ideas, about how passionate he is for the business, because he is really, really passionate if you go back and watch the WWE documentary about how he got into wrestling and stuff. And lastly, even though he snubbed me, I still would love to interview Don Callis. Of course, I'm talking about Cyrus from Killing the Town podcast. We saw him at WrestleCon from afar. I yelled, "Don Callis, 7-star commentary!" And there was tons of wrestlers around him, but I chose to yell out at him. And I just got so excited, I just couldn't help myself. I yelled. He looked at me like I was crazy. And he kind of scoffed at me, kind of. And all these people around were laughing. They're like, "What the heck? You've got, like, Tyler Bate over there, and you're sitting here yelling out for Callis?" And I'm like, "I can't help it. Killing the Town's my favorite podcast. You don't understand. I love him." So even though he kind of hurt my feelings a little bit, I would still love to interview him. Very smart, turning Impact around. And I love his commentary with Kevin Kelly. And how cool is it that somebody's out of the wrestling business for like over a decade, can come in, and now he's got like 3 different jobs. He's podcasting, he's a head exec at Impact, and he's doing New Japan commentary. And actually now he's doing a lot more Impact commentary as well. I mean, to just go full force back into wrestling, I think that's kind of cool. And he's bringing that whole business experience that he has into it too.
Well, I wouldn't take it personally, first of all. If his actual person is anything like his character, in as an analyst, I think he just doesn't like anybody. That potentially could be it. I'll take one of yours. Chris Jericho would probably be a great interview for a number of reasons. You could ask him about, WCW days, Attitude Era. You could ask him about music, touring, what that's like. I mean, I think he'd be a fascinating interview, so I'll say him.
Yeah, the questions really could be endless with him. And now to our next question. It's from our good friend Diesel. Diesel, you're one of my favorite people. Thanks so much for supporting us and always asking questions and always answering my questions. Questions. We answer all your questions. I'm not as good as you, Diesel, but you can find Diesel at Diesel_VFTR. If you could change one thing about professional wrestling in 2018, what would it be? Man, that's a difficult question. I don't know. This is kind of in-depth, so hang on with me for a second. I would change how much people want the WWE to take independent stars away from the non-WWE promotions. People are always like, "Oh, don't you want to see Kenny Omega in WWE?" And as you and I said a couple of weeks ago, my answer is no! No! Please no. I would just love it if people would become less focused on everyone going to WWE. And I don't want WWE to fail. I don't want them to lose all their talent, but they already have so many people that they can't use. And it's not all their own fault. It's just that there's so much great talent and only so much programming time that they have. And so, knowing that, I wish people would take a step back and say, we don't need a wrestling monopoly. We need wrestling to keep its variety. How we do that is keeping the other promotions strong by keeping other talent where they are. So I would just like to see the mindset kind of change a little bit. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go kind of back to our discussion topic in the second segment, and this is kind of along the same lines. I'd like to see WWE raise or elevate the level of wrestling to what everybody else is doing. And, you can still have, how great would WWE be if it was this great spectacle, but also they wrestled like they do in Ring of Honor and New Japan, and wasn't so safe all the time. So to me, that's the thing I would change. I would make WWE raise its wrestling game to the level of its spectacle game. Our next question is from Young Skywalker. That's at THEYGSKYWALKER. And he asks, when will McMahon realize that Roman Reigns is not the guy? Well, if you've watched wrestling, you know that Vince McMahon is stubborn, so he's never going to realize that he's not the guy. He's going to keep trying because Vince doesn't admit that he's wrong very often, so he's going to keep pushing it till he gets his way or and WWE fandom caves, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I just think that he's going to keep trying and keep trying and keep trying, and he won't care what the audience feels, even though there's some really, really intense backlash, no pun intended. People leaving in droves during that main event against Samoa Joe, Reigns against Joe. And it wasn't just male fans, I read. It was families leaving. Part of it was that it was so late, in the night, and everyone, has work on a Monday because it's Sunday night. But still, it's like he gets booed. He gets some cheers when the matches go on. I don't see anything changing Vince's mind. He's already seen, the negative reaction, and it doesn't matter. But then again, one could argue that any reaction is a good reaction. And a lot of people in wrestling say that. So technically, Reigns is over. But he's not over as a babyface.
No.
But it doesn't matter because he's still getting that reaction that they want. So I don't know. Does it really matter if Vince will ever realize he's not the guy? I don't think so. They'll just do what they do. We'll complain. Which a lot of people complain about people complaining. Me, I love to analyze, so even my complaining, it's fun, kind of, because it's like, let's talk about this. Let's figure out why we don't like Roman Reigns. Let's figure out why we're upset with WWE. What's wrong with talking if you're not bashing, other people's opinions? You're just saying what you're unhappy with. So I don't think there's anything wrong about being unhappy about Roman's push, but it is what it is, and we all just have to deal, because I don't think it's changing anytime soon. Okay, well, our next question comes from KC at Planet Kayfabe. He asks, with Money in the Bank becoming a major pay-per-view on recent years, how much do you look forward to it on the WWE calendar compared to big shows like the Royal Rumble and SummerSlam?
I like Money in the Bank. I've liked the concept since the get-go. I still don't consider it a major pay-per-view, though. As much as Michael Cole tried to push that during Raw, saying it's Money in the Bank season and it's one of his favorite pay-per-views and all that. It's one of my favorite pay-per-views, but it's not the Royal Rumble or it's not SummerSlam. It's there's tiers. That's just the way it is, and that's a second-tier pay-per-view. Royal Rumble, SummerSlam, WrestleMania, and Survivor Series are their core pay-per-views. Money in the Bank is just at a level behind that.
Well, I think Money in the Bank's a pretty exciting pay-per-view. But, I liked when Money in the Bank was part of WrestleMania. Mm-hmm. That didn't last that long, but I still enjoyed it. Not that it takes away from having a pay-per-view, but wouldn't that add some more excitement to Mania? Because sometimes the matches lack any kind of consequence, whereas Money in the Bank, that match obviously has consequence. So to me, it would really be well-suited for being a part of WrestleMania again, and I would be even more excited to see it there than anywhere else.
I agree. Next question is from Josh Wolf at J_Wealth, and he asks, hey, new listener, anyone think it's awesome that Impact is at Lucha Underground AAA talent show is good now? Well, I think Impact has defined a creative way to be a competitor, and nobody else is really full on going, the Lucha route. So I think it's a brilliant idea by Impact to try and be different.
Obviously, Impact is kind of taking, some guidance from what Ring of Honor has done with New Japan and that relationship. I feel like the Ring of Honor New Japan relationship is so important to their success. And so seeing that, I think it's so smart that Impact itself tries to develop relationships as well. Obviously, they can't go after New Japan, but Lucha Underground is huge. It's very popular. It's different. People like it because of its uniqueness. So to me, yeah, it's genius. And it really kind of adds another layer to what they're doing. And I think it's really smart for Impact to change its whole philosophy. And this goes back to me saying that Don Callis is so smart. One of the first things they changed when he came aboard was the contracts and making people, not like they own their property. They can take their name, their character other places. And I think another big thing they did was decide to work with other people. They're also kind of looking at relationships in Europe. I think that's a big deal too. So all of this is positives. I think this is a great step forward for them. And obviously it's showing in their viewership numbers because it's getting better and better viewership-wise. So kudos. They're doing well. It's a smart move on their part.
Before we move on to the next question, just want to take a quick note of Darth Vapor, our good friend, who always interacts with us at metal_2006. He asked a question about Money in the Bank and which superstar would benefit from winning Money in the Bank, male and female. I think we want to wait till the qualifying matches are over and kind of get a better idea of who's in it. So we're going to table this question for now. But once the qualifying matches are over, maybe we can make a decision on who we think would most benefit by winning Money in the Bank.
Yeah, I would say that if, none of the qualifying matches had begun and had taken place, we would have answered this like out of the pool of everybody on the roster. But, since some people have been eliminated and others we don't know who's going to even be in it, I would say let's wait, because I really want to give you a good estimation of who we think might win out of the possibilities.
But we can't answer the second part of his question. Will we ever see a tag team Money in the Bank? I think that's an interesting concept. I mean, I think it would be similar to the great matches we saw with Edge and Christian and Matt and Jeff and the Dudleys, where there was a ladder involved and I think and a belt hanging above the ring as opposed to a contract. So I think a tag team Money in the Bank, I think, would be tremendous.
I think it would be a great idea, and it would elevate the tag team division because, historically in the last 15 or so years after the great teams that we all remember, like Matt and Jeff and Edge and Christian and the Dudleys, since then, there hasn't been that type of prestige with the tag team belts. People look at it, kind of lesser. And that's because the way they book it and the way they present it as less than. And it shouldn't be presented that way because we know from non-WWE promotions that, tag teams can be kind of thought of as the best thing on the whole card. WWE is not the same. They've never kind of booked it that way. So to me, this would be a great way. What a great idea to kind of elevate that whole division. I love that idea. Great job with that question. Love that. All right, our next question, I love this, comes from our good friend Golden Graham. And hi to Mason as well, because we know you're listening too. Really love you. As a baseball-loving Brit, I know what foods to eat at baseball games, but what are you supposed to eat at wrestling events? I guess I'm also asking, what are your favorite foods to eat when watching wrestling events at home and at events?
Well, I don't know actually at a wrestling event if I've ever eaten anything. I know I've drank beer, so I guess the answer for me is beer. At home, pizza and beer. So those are the choices for me.
Jeez, what's wrong with you? You go to an arena and you don't get some cotton candy? Like, that's my jam right there. The pink kind. I go for that as much as I can. Sometimes it's hard to get those guys' attention who are selling the cotton candy, but I try.
You telling me you want cotton candy with your St. Arnold right now?
I would totally eat some cotton candy with this beer, yes.
You're crazy.
But also at home, man, the options are even more. I would totally just go to Walgreens or whatever, convenience store, get a whole bunch of candies, because sometimes they have deals, like you get 4 for $1, or $1 each for a whole bunch of choices. Whoppers, Sour Patch Kids, man, so many good things. Snow Caps. I could go on forever. Candy is kind of like my main thing that I love to eat that's bad for you. So, cool question, Golden Graham.
Our next question is from @KingNJ90. When do you think it will be Juice Robinson's time to get singles gold? Seems like we may get him versus Jay White at Dominion for the U.S. title. I think he's ready, and he's already insanely over. I think this is a good question as well, because I think Juice certainly has proven that he is popular with the crowd, and I think if he went against Jay White at Dominion, I think the crowd would be totally behind him. Because they're not overly behind Jay White as it is. So yeah, I'd like to see him get a title shot and finally bring home singles gold.
No question, Juice is over. And he's good, too. It's crazy to think back at what he was like when he was in NXT. Gimmick wasn't even that much different. It was somewhat similar. Like, he had the dreads still. He was kind of like fun and goofy. And I don't know, I feel like the way they've built him up to be somebody of note, to be a contender, kind of shows you some of New Japan's strengths. There's really no jobbers in New Japan Pro Wrestling, and that really shows in how much Juice has gotten over with the crowd, how great of an athlete he has become over there. Not that he always wasn't, but he's gotten even better since he's moved over there. And I'd love to see him get a singles run with the U.S. belt.
He's just got to lose those tights. Those tights are awful.
They are pretty bad, but he's doing that on purpose.
I know. I would hope he's doing it on purpose. I hope so. Nobody is coercing him into this.
Yeah, that would be some bad advice to wear those tights if it was somebody else. Brendan Politis asks, who should be the next ROH champion? Well, obviously, I've said this before. I think it should be Marty Scurll. He's so, like Juice, insanely over in Ring of Honor. I don't know, it's just his time. I think he could elevate the title. He could bring a lot of publicity to it because he's so charismatic. His character is really, really entertaining, and yeah, I think it should be him. What about you, Paul?
I agree. If you're asking me who I'd like to see get a title run at some point, I'd say Punishment Martinez, because I'm a big fan of him, but they got to develop him a little more as well. But to me, it's Marty Scurll.
Oh, I'd love to see Punishment too, though. That's a great choice. Didn't even think of him.
Our final question is from Shushovan Patanek. Will WWE ever build a true face star with its current impatient fan base, especially the internet fandom, because they just turn on anybody? Sasha, Balor, even Seth Rollins for the better part of last year. It is true. They try to build faces, as we mentioned with Roman Reigns, unsuccessfully. I almost think it can't be something WWE develops. I think it has to happen organically. Either a wrestler's going to be over with his personality and his wrestling, or he's not. I mean, they can try and push an agenda, but it's really up to the fans.
It's up to the fans in a way, but I think too much blame is being given on the fans, because actually they had amazing baby faces. Let's take Sami Zayn, like I say every single week. Sami Zayn was so over. He could have been your top baby face in a heartbeat. What's the problem there? WWE, the way they used him, the way they portrayed him, they did not see him fit to be a higher up, top tier guy when he moved to the main roster. I could think of others like Bayley as well. Bayley could have had the women's title multiple times now, and she could have been so over with like little girls and little kids and top, babyface star. And these people, they don't feel force-fed. Sami Zayn always felt natural to me. Now, that's subjective. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe other people are like, right. I can't stand Sami. But it was there.
And it was for Bayley, too.
Exactly, and it was ready to be tapped into, but they didn't utilize it. So to me, it's not the fandom. It's kind of WWE messing up things. When they come along, they're already ready to go, and they kind of screw with it a little bit. Somebody like Roman Reigns, they kind of invest and they go too far with it, and that's not organic. So I think they just kind of invest and push the wrong people sometimes. Not all the time. I'm not saying, fans aren't impatient, because I'm sure we all are, a little bit. But no, I think kind of the blame is with WWE when they have stars that could work perfectly as a babyface. Well, thank you everyone for your questions. It's one of my favorite parts of the show because I love hearing you guys' thoughts, and it's nice to interact with you. And please, something that we don't oftentimes hear is your feedback after we answer your questions. So if you completely disagree, let us know. If you agree with us, on the other hand, let us know as well, because I just want to hear what you guys are thinking at home. And so now it's time to close out the show and send them home. What do you have, Paul?
Well, it kind of ties into that last question. And it's something that's really bugging me here in the last month with WWE. And the question a moment ago was baby faces and things like that. I think Elias is one of the most over guys in wrestling. We've talked about him on the show in the past, that who would have guessed he'd be this popular. But now, in typical WWE form, they're not emphasizing his wrestling at all. They've got him on a huge losing streak. He maybe has won an intermittent match or so. But basically, since he got destroyed by John Cena at WrestleMania, it's just loss after loss. And so all Elias is bringing to the table is comic relief. And he's great at that. But at Backlash, comes out, the spot he did was funny. Very funny. But he gets beat up by Bobby Roode. Then he gets beat up by Bobby Roode in a match the next night. I think they're making a huge mistake with Elias, just turning him into a joke and somebody funny and not utilizing his phenomenal wrestling talent. And I think the same thing's going to happen, as we've mentioned before, with No Way Jose. It's just going to be a fun gimmick, but he's never going to get over as a wrestler because they won't let him wrestle, and he's a very good wrestler. So, typical WWE in that regard, that they're too much about the ha-ha and the funny stuff, and you got two really good wrestlers, and they're not going to let them be what they are, good wrestlers.
Good points there, Paul. And I'm sending them home with some discussion about a particular wrestler that I really like, Tama Tonga. Might seem a little random, but I'm also going to kind of bring in some Roman Reigns discussion here, because for some reason, their characters really remind me of each other. But Tama Tonga is like, I don't know, the way he carries himself, he's almost like a way cooler Roman Reigns. Like, Roman Reigns to the next level, Roman Reigns done right. And let me just weave in some things of why I'm talking about him today. So firstly, I thought of talking about him because I heard an interview with him and Tonga Loa on Killing the Town podcast. Don Callis interviewed them both. I really enjoyed it. I learned some things I didn't know about them before, like Tama Tonga was actually in the military, which I had no idea. Callis kind of asked, wow, did you have a hard time taking directions? Because I honestly cannot even see you, taking directions and being in line under people. And he actually was super respectful, and he said, well, I had to follow orders from my mom, and that was a lot harder than following orders in the Army, so there you go. I found that interview very good. I highly recommend it. It's Killing the Town podcast, the latest episode. It was just cool to hear him outside of the ring being really formal because, inside of the ring, he curses a lot. He's really passionate, and he seems really physical, but at the same time, really slow and calculating and chill. His body movements really remind me of somebody like Randy Orton, somebody who's just made to be a wrestler. Like, that's what he was meant to be, because everything he does just flows and it seems effortless. And even Callis said that in the interview. All that having been said, our friends kind of started up a Roman Reigns discussion. Their Pro Wrestling Recap at PW Recap on Twitter. They said, why all the hate for Roman Reigns? And, people were listing a whole bunch of reasons. It was a very fascinating discussion. It lasted literally all day on Twitter. One of the most fascinating parts was, some traits that people thought could be better. Like, why is he so corny on the mic? Why can't he just, lose the same old Shield character? And then I thought to myself, wow, I'm going to compare him to Tama Tonga. So what I said was, if you put Roman Reigns and Tama Tonga together side by side, I'd pick Tama Tonga every time. There's just something about him, aura, and a way that he carries himself that, to me, is more appealing. And it all goes down to charisma. Some wrestlers just have it in some people's minds, like it's a subjective thing. To me, Tama Tonga has what I consider to be charisma, whereas Roman Reigns does not. He does not, entertain me. I don't get overly invested in his character. And I think that speaks volumes about Tama Tonga. He pulls off what he's doing so well, along with the, really flowing style of his wrestling. He's got that character that's over the top and cursing, and really, really intense. And that's what I like about him. So to me, he's kind of an underrated guy. People kind of dismissed him a few years ago. A lot more people respect him now, but still, I think he's mostly underrated. And he's more than just, cursing in the ring. He's really a good wrestler, and I love the way he carries himself.
Yep, he's awesome and he's cool.
He is cool. And you could say he's cool, but it just doesn't feel right when you say Roman Reigns is cool. Because to me, it's not true.
It's a forced trying to be cool.
Exactly. Tama Tonga doesn't have to try. He just is.
Well, that's going to do it for another Two-Faced Wrestling Talk. But again, we've got many more Ring of Honor interviews. And what do we got next week?
Well, next week we're going to have Ring of Honor's Joe Koff. And he's going to be talking about all kinds of things, including why Honor Club is so important for Ring of Honor as a company. And, you know, how important the passion in the locker room is to their success. So thanks so much again, guys. Have a good rest of the day. Thank you.